He came home early from a business trip and found a stranger's watch on his nightstand. But instead of confronting his wife, he smiled, because her downfall was already in motion. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about calculated revenge, reputation, and a man who turned heartbreak into power. You'll want to hear how it ends. Nathan Drake sat still behind the wheel of his obsidian black BMW, his hands gripping the leather with silent intensity. The 40-year-old criminal defense attorney was parked in front of the house he once considered a sanctuary. His storm-gray eyes remained locked on the front door, the suburban home now cloaked in shadows from the setting sun. Nathan had ended his business trip several days early, driven not by professional urgency, but by an anonymous phone call that shook him to his core. The voice on the other end had been calm, matter-of-fact, and cruel in its clarity. His wife Lena was seeing someone else. The words had echoed in his mind since the call, burning themselves into his memory. As he stepped out of the vehicle, the crisp air carried with it an unfamiliar scent, one he instantly recognized as not his own. A cologne, sharp, musky, foreign, hung around the entrance like an uninvited guest. His jaw tightened. He inserted the key into the lock, fingers trembling ever so slightly. The door opened with a quiet creak. Inside, Lena reclined on the living room couch, her expression quickly shifting from surprise to something more complicated, an emotion between guilt and calculation. She greeted him with forced enthusiasm, her voice too bright, too controlled. Nathan didn't respond. His gaze swept the room like an investigator processing a crime scene. Cushions that had been recently adjusted, the faint scent of perfume layered over something masculine, and the unmistakable tension that lingered in the air. Without a word, he turned and ascended the stairs. Each footstep felt heavier, louder. In the bedroom, the truth waited silently. The bed was made, but not with care. Wrinkles in the sheets told a different story. On the nightstand rested a luxury watch, definitely not Nathan's. He picked it up, studying it with the clinical detachment he used to dismantle lies in court. It was the type of watch worn by someone trying to impress. Years in the courtroom had taught Nathan to contain his emotions, to suppress impulse in favor of precision. That night, those skills became his armor. He would not confront Lena, not yet. Instead, he decided to act as though he suspected nothing. Deception would be met with deception. Over the next few days, Nathan transformed into a man even his closest friends wouldn't recognize. He followed the routines of a loving husband, masking his true thoughts behind smiles and small talk. At breakfast, he complimented Lena's cooking. In the evenings, he joined her on the couch, pretending to watch television while his mind raced. Her attempts at intimacy were met with feigned warmth, though his heart had grown colder by the hour. In the solitude of his downtown office, Nathan placed a discreet call to Elijah Boone, a longtime colleague and a skilled private investigator. The request was direct: surveillance on Lena. It was personal this time, and Elijah didn't ask for details. Meanwhile, Nathan began enhancing the home's security system. Under the pretense of installing smart upgrades, he placed discreet cameras in key areas, hallways, entry points, even the master bedroom. It was ironic that the same expertise head used in reviewing surveillance evidence for criminal trials was now employed to document the unraveling of his own marriage. As the days passed, Lena's behavior shifted. She seemed more relaxed, confident even. Her excuses for late nights became more frequent. Dressed in outfits more suited for nightlife than business, she would offer a quick kiss and claim to be heading to extended meetings. Nathan remained the picture of acceptance, nodding at her explanations while inwardly cataloging each one. Footage from Elijah soon confirmed what Nathan already suspected. Lena had been meeting with a man named Travis Shaw, a junior executive at her firm. Their interactions were far from professional. The sight of them entering a hotel together didn't provoke rage in Nathan. It sparked focus. Back in the courtroom, Nathan used his pain as fuel. His performance in recent trials was more incisive, more relentless. Colleagues took note of his sharpened demeanor, mistaking it for renewed ambition. Tara Quinn, his longtime paralegal, remarked on his elevated drive, unaware of its true source. Each victory in court was a small reclaiming of control. Nathan poured his energy into strategy not just for clients, but for his own retribution. The betrayal had lit a fire in him, one that would not burn out easily. He knew the time would come to act, but for now, he waited and watched, quietly building the foundation of a calculated response. Nathan Drake's life became a performance so flawless, even Lena couldn't sense the storm building beneath his composed exterior. He moved through their shared home with practiced ease, playing the part of the devoted husband while every word, every gesture was laced with quiet calculation. The betrayal she believed hidden was, in truth, a script Nathan read with chilling clarity. By day, he built legal defenses that dismantled prosecution cases. By night, he constructed the framework of a personal counterattack, one that would not only expose Lena's deception, but ensure she faced its full consequences. His mind, trained in the intricacies of justice, had already begun mapping out each move as if preparing for the trial of a lifetime. The surveillance confirmed everything he needed to know. Travis Shaw, junior partner at Lena's firm, was the man she thought she could hide. Their frequent visits to upscale hotels, captured from various angles, offered irrefutable proof. Nathan reviewed the footage late at night with an expression that never changed, cold, unreadable. Emotion had long since given way to resolve. One morning, while Lena was at the office, though Nathan now understood how fluid that term had become, he set a new plan in motion. Under the guise of reviewing their finances, he began shifting their joint assets. Savings accounts were quietly dissolved, investment portfolios reassigned. The bulk of their shared wealth was moved into private holdings only he could access. It wasn't revenge. It was preparation. He intended to leave Lena not only exposed but defenseless. Simultaneously, he scheduled a meeting with Celeste Ward, a divorce attorney whose reputation was as ruthless as it was impeccable. Nathan had once faced her in court and had walked away with a grudging respect for her precision. Now, that same precision would be his weapon. Their conversation was brief but impactful. Nathan arrived with a thick folder of evidence, timestamp surveillance, phone records, financial anomalies, all laid out like exhibits in court. Celeste, a woman not easily impressed, nodded slowly as she examined the materials. "You've done your homework," she said. Nathan merely replied, "I want this over quickly, and I want her to feel it." Outside the legal arena, Nathan continued tightening the net. An anonymous call was placed to the HR department of Lena's firm. His voice, disguised and careful, outlined a pattern of inappropriate relationships involving Travis and mentioned questionable expenses. The response was immediate and professional. The HR representative assured him the matter would be handled discreetly, but thoroughly. That was enough. When Friday evening arrived, Nathan knew what Lena had planned before she even gave her usual excuse. Dressed in an outfit more suited to a nightclub than a business dinner, she offered a kiss on the cheek and a quick, "Don't wait up." Nathan simply nodded. He waited until he heard her car pull away before setting the final preparations in motion. He moved through the house like a surgeon preparing for an operation. Every item Lena held dear, designer handbags, shoes, luxury scarves, jewelry, was gathered into trash bags with mechanical indifference. There was no care taken in the packing. This was not a relocation. It was an erasure. Her side of the closet, once curated with pride, became a hollow space in minutes. Then he saw the wedding dress, the symbol of vows that had meant everything to him and evidently nothing to her. He removed it from its hanger and laid it flat on the bed. The scissors in his hand trembled only slightly as he began cutting. The once elegant fabric fell in uneven strips, its elegance torn apart just as their marriage had been. A locksmith arrived shortly after midnight, confused but professional. Nathan instructed him to change every lock. The man didn't ask questions. Within the hour, every key Lena possessed was obsolete. Nathan then arranged the bags of her belongings neatly on the front porch, a final act of organization from a man who thrived on control. He wrote a short note, careful with each letter. "I hope he was worth losing everything for." He folded it once and secured it on top of the bags with Lena's wedding ring. Then he left. The city's most exclusive hotel welcomed Nathan without fanfare. In his suite, he poured a glass of expensive scotch and watched the skyline from the balcony. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't mourning. He was simply reclaiming what had been taken. His sense of self, his control, and soon his freedom. At home, hours later, Lena returned to chaos. The bags on the porch, the uncooperative key, the silence of an empty house. It all unraveled her. When she read the note, the gravity of Nathan's knowledge hit her like a blow. She panicked, calling him repeatedly, leaving voicemails full of denial, confusion, and pleading. But Nathan's phone remained silent. Her words would not reach him. The stage was set. The audience had been dismissed. Nathan sat in the darkness of his suite, the city lights flickering like quiet applause outside. The performance was over. Now it was time for the verdict. The day after Lena found her belongings neatly stacked outside the home she once ruled, she and Travis stormed into Nathan Drake's law office unannounced. Travis wore the mask of false bravado, while Lena oscillated between fury and desperation. They expected chaos, an emotional explosion, perhaps even begging. What they found was silence and control. Nathan sat behind his desk like a judge on the bench, his face unreadable. When Lena demanded an explanation, he simply gestured toward a large envelope in front of him. Inside were divorce papers, clean, calculated, undeniable. The expression on Lena's face twisted from confusion to disbelief. Travis tried to speak, but Nathan silenced him with a single glance, reminding him, without words, that this was a legal battlefield, and Travis was woefully out of his depth. Lena's threats were met with apathy. She hissed about reputations, revenge, leverage. Nathan barely acknowledged her words. The only thing he offered was a quiet warning. Lies would bring consequences, and defamation was still punishable by law. With that, they were dismissed. The game had entered its next phase, and Nathan held every piece. In the days that followed, word of the scandal began spreading. Nathan didn't need to manipulate the narrative. The truth carried enough weight on its own. His attorney, Celeste Ward, assembled their case with the precision of a surgeon. Every surveillance image, every bank statement, every timestamped document was curated into an indisputable body of evidence. Lena had not only betrayed her husband, but had misused marital finances to indulge her affair. The day of the first hearing arrived, and the courthouse buzzed like a hive before a storm. High-profile divorces always drew attention, but this one had all the elements of a modern tragedy: power, betrayal, status, and retribution. Nathan entered the courtroom dressed in charcoal gray, his demeanor calm, his confidence absolute. Behind him, Celeste reviewed her notes, ready to dismantle whatever narrative Lena's side tried to spin. Across the aisle, Lena sat beside her attorney, Logan Mills, a man far less seasoned, his unease betrayed by a fidgeting pen and unsteady voice. Lena whispered furiously to him before the session began, but it was already too late. When Judge Evelyn Cross took the bench, her no-nonsense presence set the tone. Celeste's opening remarks were surgical, void of theatrics. She presented Nathan not as a victim, but as a man of principle, betrayed in both marriage and trust. Then she introduced the evidence, item by item, turning Lena's months of deception into a brutal mosaic of self-sabotage. Logan attempted to salvage Lena's defense by painting her as neglected, emotionally isolated. But his arguments crumbled beneath the weight of documented facts. Receipts, emails, video stills, and even transferred funds formed a picture too vivid to deny. When Lena tried to interject from her seat, the judge swiftly silenced her with a warning. The most damning moment came when Travis was called to testify. Gone was the swagger of a confident executive. On the stand, he shrank under Celeste's questioning. His responses were hesitant, evasive. Eventually, pressed by the relentless flow of inquiry, he admitted to the affair. Worse still, he confessed to fabricating business expenses to hide hotel visits and gifts, under Lena's suggestion. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Lena's composure shattered. She hissed at Travis under her breath, calling him a liar and a coward. The judge's gavel struck the bench again, this time with more force, issuing Lena a final warning about courtroom conduct. By the time court adjourned for the day, it was clear which side held the advantage. Spectators whispered, reporters scribbled notes, and Logan Mills slumped forward with the weight of defeat already pressing on him. Nathan, meanwhile, remained composed, walking past the crowd without so much as a glance in Lena's direction. The legal battle had only begun, but the power dynamic had already shifted irreversibly. Nathan wasn't merely fighting for freedom from a toxic marriage. He was showcasing how dignity, patience, and intelligence could triumph over betrayal. And Lena, once the woman who believed she could have everything, was beginning to understand what it meant to lose. The fallout from the courtroom revelations was immediate and merciless. Lena Blake's once polished image crumbled in full view of the very society she had once commanded. Once admired for her charm and influence, she was now a cautionary tale. Her name whispered behind hands and her presence quietly avoided at events she once helped organize. Within days, Lena was asked to step down from multiple committees. Margot Lane, wife of Nathan's senior partner, approached her with a sympathetic smile that barely concealed the social distancing behind it. The excuse was delivered with the precision of a scalpel. "We need to maintain our public image." Lena accepted the dismissal in silence, her hands clasped tightly to hide their trembling. Everywhere she turned, doors that had once been open now remained shut. Her social media accounts became ghost towns. Invitations vanished. The only messages she received were from gossip blogs hungry for an interview or a scandalous quote. The life she had built on admiration and status now existed in ruins. At the same time, Travis Shaw faced his own reckoning. The ethics board at his firm had been quietly building a case ever since that anonymous HR tip was lodged. Fueled by the documents and recorded transactions Celeste had provided during discovery, the investigation accelerated. One morning, Travis was summoned into a conference room. Mr. Langston from HR stood at the head of the table, flanked by two senior partners. They presented evidence of falsified expense reports, documented inappropriate conduct with subordinates, and testimonials from employees who had long remained silent. Travis offered explanations, denials, and desperate apologies, but none landed. By the end of the hour, he was placed on indefinite suspension. The implication was clear. Termination was only a matter of formalities. That evening, Travis returned to his apartment and found Lena already waiting. Her makeup was smudged from crying, her demeanor far removed from the confident executive she once pretended to be. She tried to speak of rebuilding, of finding solace in each other's failures. But Travis had already begun to rewrite their history. He blamed her, her recklessness, her poor judgment, her decision to confront Nathan. It had all, according to him, led them here. Their argument was short but vicious. Words sharpened by panic and resentment filled the room, and within moments, Travis told her to leave. He had no more patience, no more affection, and no space left in his world for the woman who had become a liability. Lena walked out with nothing but her purse and the weight of her own regret. Desperate and alone, Lena turned to the only family she had left, her brother, Brandon Myers. He was hesitant from the first call, his tone clipped, his answers brief. But she begged him to help, convinced that somewhere in Nathan's seemingly perfect past, there must be something, anything, that could be used to regain leverage. Brandon, though reluctant, agreed to look. What he found wasn't ammunition, but the opposite. Nathan's records were clean. His tax filings, charitable donations, mentoring efforts, all painted a picture of a man whose integrity ran deep. Far from unearthing skeletons, Brandon uncovered acts of quiet generosity. Pro bono work for victims of abuse, anonymous scholarships, donations to shelters. The deeper he dug, the more certain he became. Nathan wasn't just legally untouchable. He was morally fortified. Brandon returned to Lena's small apartment with a folder in his hands and defeat in his eyes. The news hit her hard. She pleaded for another chance, another angle, but Brandon refused. Not only that, He had also discovered discrepancies in Lena's own accounts. Unreported offshore assets, personal expenses hidden under company invoices. Evidence that could easily be used against her. When she realized he intended to give it all to Nathan's legal team, Lena erupted. She accused him of betrayal, of turning his back on family. Brandon didn't argue. He simply told her the truth. He could no longer justify protecting someone who showed no remorse, no growth, and no understanding of the damage she had caused. After he left, the silence in the apartment grew louder. Lena sat alone, staring at the same walls that now felt more like a prison than a home. She had lost her marriage, her lover, her friends, her status, and now her own brother. Meanwhile, Nathan continued his life with unwavering focus. He did not celebrate Lena's fall. There was no joy in watching someone self-destruct. But there was clarity. He had warned her through his silence and his strategy that betrayal would come at a cost. And now that debt was being collected. The final stages of the divorce loomed on the horizon. Nathan was more than prepared. Lena, however, was running out of time, resources, and hope. The day of the final court ruling arrived under a cloudless sky, but inside the courtroom, tension crackled like an approaching storm. Nathan Drake walked up the courthouse steps with the quiet certainty of a man who had weathered fire and emerged forged. His dark tailored suit, polished demeanor, and calm stride commanded attention. Behind him, Celeste Ward moved with practiced grace, her briefcase filled with every document that would finalize Lena Blake's downfall. Inside, the air buzzed with anticipation. Journalists occupied the benches near the back, their pens and lenses aimed not at Lena, but at the man who had become a symbol of poised resistance against personal betrayal. Lena sat across the aisle, her posture slouched, her expression grim. Gone was the woman who once boasted about late meetings and upscale cocktails. In her place sat a shadow, pale, exhausted, and emotionally threadbare. Her attorney, Logan Mills, looked equally defeated. Every attempt to change the narrative had failed. The facts were too strong, the damage self-inflicted. Judge Evelyn Cross entered the courtroom with an air of finality. She had heard enough over the previous weeks to form a judgment that was as clear as the mountain of evidence laid before her. Her voice rang out with the sternness of someone who had seen too many stories end the same way. The verdict left no ambiguity. Nathan was granted full control of the marital estate. Lena's claim to alimony was denied on the grounds of misconduct and financial deception. The judge made it clear that her court did not reward betrayal disguised as hardship. Any remaining assets not already claimed by Nathan were to be divided in a manner that left Lena with little more than she'd brought into the marriage. The ruling also included a formal admonition. Judge Cross addressed Lena directly, stating that her actions during the marriage and the courtroom displayed a lack of accountability and respect for the institution she had helped fracture. Lena's face remained expressionless as the final gavel fell, but her eyes revealed the deep cracks forming in what little composure she had left. Outside the courthouse, Nathan was met by former clients, colleagues, and even casual acquaintances offering handshakes and nods of admiration. He said little, accepting their support with modest humility. Among the crowd stood Tara Quinn, who had remained a quiet yet consistent presence throughout the ordeal. Her eyes held pride and affection, and when she offered a quiet "well done," Nathan simply nodded, knowing the words carried more weight than applause ever could. Lena, meanwhile, slipped out a side exit, hoping to avoid the cameras and whispers. But the whispers had already traveled far beyond courthouse walls. Her name was no longer associated with elegance and influence. Now it was a lesson passed quietly in social circles. Don't destroy what you aren't prepared to live without. Months passed. Nathan's life steadily bloomed. He was promoted to senior partner at his firm and redirected his energy into expanding the foundation he had launched to support victims of domestic abuse. The work was deeply personal, an outlet for everything he had endured, and a way to give meaning to pain that once threatened to undo him. During a firm-wide celebration for his promotion, Nathan met Dr. Camille Rhodes, a neurosurgeon known for her brilliance and calm intensity. Their connection was quiet at first, built on mutual respect and curiosity. Over time, it evolved into something enduring and deeply human. 2 years after that evening, they were married in a private ceremony surrounded by people who had stood with Nathan through his storm. The note he had once left on Lena's bags, "I hope he was worth losing everything for," was long gone from his desk. In its place were photos. Smiling children from shelters he helped fund, Camille standing beside him at a charity gala, Tara receiving her law degree with his mentorship. The past had served its purpose. Now it rested in peace. As for Lena, 5 years later, she lived in a modest apartment far from the glittering neighborhoods she once called home. The small settlement she received had long since evaporated, consumed by failed attempts at reinvention. She worked as a clerk at a local insurance firm, clocking in and out of a life that no longer resembled the one she lost. Romantic prospects vanished as quickly as they arrived. Her reputation preceded her, and though some men were curious, none stayed long. She had become, in quiet ways, infamous. Travis Shaw's decline was even steeper. Disbarred and disgraced, he worked a series of low-paying jobs, never staying long. His charisma eroded under the pressure of regret and shame. Rumors placed him in small towns, sometimes seen at bars talking too loudly about who he used to be. No one listened. One crisp autumn evening, Nathan and Camille walked through the park, their hands entwined as golden leaves drifted around them. On a bench near the path, a solitary figure sat hunched over. It was Lena. Time had not been gentle. Her eyes met Nathan's for a brief second, a glance filled not with hope, but with acknowledgement. He nodded once, not out of sympathy, but out of closure. Camille squeezed his hand, and together they walked on. Nathan Drake had rebuilt his life from ashes, not as a man hardened by betrayal, but as someone who used pain as the foundation for purpose. He had walked through fire and emerged stronger, wiser, and whole. His story wasn't one of revenge. It was one of transformation, and that, in the end, was his greatest triumph.